To those of you joining us today, thank you for watching the Woburn Spotlight. I'm your host, Tyler Gates, here to bring you some positivity by talking to those in town, making big strides for the greater good. Today I'm extremely fortunate to have with me Landry, who's running for state representative of the 30th Middlesex District. Did I say that correct, Ann?
You did. You got
Wonderful.
it. Perfect.
It was a mouthful for me.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler, and thank you to the Woburn Public Media Center for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. We're excited to hear your story and a little bit about what's next for Ann.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.
For any viewer that isn't familiar with your story, do you mind just kind of taking a step back before we move forward and tell us a little bit about you and what you're here to talk about today?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I have worked on both the House and Senate sides of our state legislature. I'm a town meeting and finance committee member in the town of Reading, and I think I have the legislative experience and municipal perspective to be an effective state representative. And I've worked for over a decade in public service, but I've often been the person behind the person, drafting legislation, negotiating legislation, and while I've had a seat at the table, I have not been the principal voice. And I think that I have the experience and listening skills that would enable me to bring a voice and the voice of the residents of Woburn and of Reading to the state level in a way that can have the maximum impact.
So you've had very much a legislative background.
Yes.
What got you interested to start this journey or career path?
Sure.
It's definitely a very invested career.
It is. I think back to when I was 10 years old when I filed my first piece of legislation with my own state
please
senator.
tell me more.
So I filed a bill with my state senator that would have restricted smoking in privately owned establishments where the public could enter. Now, the bill did not get very far in the process, and it's fair to say that our anti-smoking and public health laws have evolved quite a ways since then. But I think it was a great first exposure to our legislative process, and it made me really invested in that process as a way and means to affect change on a broad scale. And so I've believed in that process since it can be slow, it can be frustrating, it takes an incredible amount of perseverance because you see a lot of ideas that are great ideas falter along the way, but with persistence and with the ability to bring stakeholders to the table year after year, it's often, I've heard it's about a 7-year process on average for a bill to become law. So it really does take persistence. And it's been my pleasure in the office of Senator Brownsberger to have the opportunity to work as chief counsel on some of the pieces of legislation that have had great impact in recent years, between extending the statute of limitations and civil child sexual abuse claims, criminal justice reform most recently, civil rights public accommodations law relative to gender identity, and also in recent years, marijuana regulation. So it's been a great opportunity to have a hands-on approach in some of the most critical issues facing our Commonwealth.
So very unique story at 10 years old to dealing with some very intricate and tough challenges to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about your progression from 10 to there.
10 to there.
Because we have a big gap. And it sounds
Sure.
like there was quite a bit in there that I'd love to hear about.
Oh, thank you for asking. So I went to college at the University of Richmond where I majored in political science and Spanish. I studied abroad in San Sebastian, Spain, and did a Fulbright year following my college graduation in Madrid, where I had the opportunity to teach English in a bilingual elementary school and volunteer some time visiting patients at a hospital in Madrid, where I had an opportunity to get an up-close view at their healthcare system, which was kind of an interesting comparison.
That's very unique in itself.
Yes. Following my Fulbright year, I worked as a legislative aide to State Representative Alice Hanlon-Peisch, who currently chairs the Joint Committee on Education in Massachusetts. And then I went to law school. I thought I had a vested interest in improving the lives of others through legislation, through public service, through serving the public interest, but I didn't have as many tools as I would like to affect those goals. So I went to law school. I chose Emory University School of Law in Atlanta because they gave me a very generous financial aid package, which enabled me to pursue a public interest legal career, because student loans are hefty, and many lawyers feel that they have to pursue a corporate legal career out of financial necessity, which I totally understand. Because I knew early on I was interested in a public interest career, I chose a school that would enable me to do
take that leap. Yeah.
And I do still have student loans, certainly, but they are manageable enough for me to be able to pursue my passion of public service.
Well, that's fantastic. So that's quite the experience. Quite the experience. Do you have any passions that are kind of stem from your own life and experiences that you expect to carry forward, or maybe that are very relatable to the residents of Woburn and Reading, that you really get behind and you know that the residents will too?
I think so. I became a mom a couple of years ago, and I think that has provided some extra motivation to work to improve our communities and Commonwealth. There are very few parents of young children at the table when making policy decisions, and I think our policies reflect that reality, unfortunately. I think the unique needs of children are often put on the back burner. I was very pleased to see that the recent so-called grand bargain legislation that sought to incorporate a number of pieces of different ballot initiatives did include paid family and medical leave, which has been one of my priorities on the campaign trail. But there's a lot more work to be done. Our early education and child care can be really unaffordable and out of reach for low-income families in the Commonwealth. And I'd like to see an investment at all levels of our public education system, from early education to higher education. I think that a lot of people choose Woburn and Reading as places to raise families, and there are some unique challenges in today's day and age with working and raising families. It's not easy to do, but it's something that a lot of people have to do out of financial necessity. And I think it would be great for our Commonwealth to support policies that make it a little bit easier for people who are struggling.
That is a unique stance, and not just a stance, that's a unique approach, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I think that affects especially a lot of the working families here in Woburn and Reading specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not easy to make ends meet in today. We have such high cost of housing, and a lot of people are trying to take care of aging parents and young children at the same time, and that puts and working puts a crunch at all sides.
It can, definitely can. So it sounds like you bring a unique approach or just a unique vision to the table. What are some of your strengths that you see and your colleagues see in you that you bring to the table as well?
I think that one of my strengths is my ability to listen and digest and analyze a lot of different viewpoints and different pieces of information. I certainly, from my background as an attorney, have the ability to analyze well, but I've spent a lot of time as a staff member in the legislature, and prior to that as a public interest lawyer, listening to constituents and to clients about their concerns, and then working to find solutions to address them. With the criminal justice reform legislation that I had worked on for the past 4 years or so, as chief counsel to Senator Brownsberger, we really sought to bring all stakeholders to the table to build consensus, from probation officers, parole officers, district attorneys, public defenders, prisoners, victims of crime, so that we were able to develop this comprehensive piece of criminal justice reform that received bipartisan and bicameral support. It ended up passing the Senate unanimously and the House 148-5, and I was the Senate staff lead on that in those conference committee negotiations. And it was a tremendous experience that I'm very grateful for, and it was a lot of hard work.
I bet it was. Yeah, nothing in life that's good comes easy, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
If I got to follow it up, and I'm not sure how to ask this question, Ann. So, weakness. I know the general question is, what's your weakness? I don't like that question.
Okay.
What's a good area of opportunity for you that you see in your career moving forward to grow?
Sure. I think this actually running for office has been a great opportunity for me to move out of my comfort zone.
Great example. Let's go to that.
So I think that's, in terms of putting myself out there in as a public person, and also asking others to help me. I am very comfortable being the person who helps others. And I think that as state representative, I will have the opportunity to do that. In running for office, I have to rely on others' help time and time again, whether it's to hold signs, whether you want to put a sign in your yard, whether you want to go out and knock on doors and put yourself out there to ask people for your vote. And I have found that for me, I've been able to move outside of my comfort zone, but there was a learning curve there. It was not a natural place of comfort for me, but I've found it a tremendous opportunity to connect with members of the community in a way I never would have had had I not taken this plunge. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity and the support that I've received and the help I have received, in fact, when I've asked for it.
Okay, so it's kind of been a surprise to you, and that asking for help, asking you shall receive type of thing?
I don't know. It just put me outside of my comfort zone.
I can only imagine.
And it's extremely gratifying to see that, to have that help.
Help in numbers, it's got to
Yes.
be. That's got to be something.
It is, from people who I've met through all different parts of my life coming together to support me. It's very humbling and very gratifying.
Well, what do you have coming up for future events? If somebody today was like, I would love to shake Ann's hand, say hello,
Sure.
ask a few questions of you themselves, what's next
Absolutely.
for you?
Absolutely. So I have been doing what you might call a listening tour of the district. I've been knocking on doors. I think I've knocked on the door of about 3,000 voters to date, and I'm going to keep doing it throughout the rest of the summer. But I have a number of scheduled coffees with the candidate coming up in different coffee houses in Reading and Woburn. And you can find out what those are on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Ann with an E for state rep, and it's spelled out FOR. There will be some upcoming, you can learn about other upcoming events on my Facebook page or by subscribing to my email list, www.annforstaterep.com. We also will be having a canvassing day of action for folks who are interested in getting out there on Saturday, and you can learn more about that as well on the Facebook page.
This Saturday?
This Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's exciting.
We'll be having at least 4 throughout the summer.
Okay, so there'll be more to come.
Yes, but for those folks, if I have not knocked on your door yet, or if I've knocked on your door and you weren't home, or you can't make it to one of the upcoming coffees with the candidate, I aim to be a very accessible state representative, and I welcome your questions and concerns. So please feel free to give me a call anytime on my cell phone at 774-319-0381. I really would welcome to hear what's on your mind and what you think you would like to see your next state representative do, and what you'd like me to advocate for.
I love that. I'd like to spend a minute there too, because I'm an examples person. I love examples. It paints a picture for me, and I think maybe that will do the same for some of the viewers. So, what if somebody gave you a call, or if you were talking to a voter or a future voter, what are some of the key questions they should be asking of their future leaders at this point in our economy and our society?
Sure. I think it's worth asking, what is it that you stand for? What is the best way to reach you? What kind of a state representative are you going to meet? I plan to be a full-time state representative, and I plan to be an accessible one. I plan to listen to my constituents with my ear to the ground to what's important to them. I certainly have a number of policy priorities that I'd be happy to discuss with you, but I think it's important for people to know what candidates' policy priorities are, what kind of state representative they aim to be in terms of their accessibility, and what their philosophy is of service.
Okay.
Do they do they listen to everyone? Are they listening to only one kind of person? Do they have a big tent that they're willing to bring everyone under?
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you shared that. And two follow-up questions to that. Simple one first. What's your version of a full-time state rep? Just for the viewers listening, I'd be curious what your definition of that may be.
Sure. So I would aim to be accessible in the district and at the State House.
Okay.
I would make myself available for appointments locally and
Okay.
and
Thank
in
you
Boston.
for elaborating.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. And I also will not be taking on another paid position. I will be resigning from my position as chief counsel to Senator Brownsberger. I will resign from my position as finance committee and town meeting member in Reading.
Okay, that helps me. So hopefully that helps some the viewers as well. And the second follow-up to that is, I'd like to take just a moment to dive a little bit deeper. We'll keep it very high level, but on some of those policies and priorities that you did mention, where do you stand on some of the most passionate policies right now?
Sure. I was asked at the candidate forum what my first piece of legislation would be that I would file, and
Great question.
There I talked about paid family and medical leave, and I was very pleased to see that it was included in the grand bargain legislation. So it will now be law of the land. I think it's going to be interesting to see and important to pay very close attention to how it operates in practice and who has access to that policy. There probably will be opportunities for expansion down the line. I think another piece of legislation that I'm very interested in advancing is updating our Chapter 70 school funding formula, which determines how much state aid communities like Woburn and Reading receive from the state for our public school system. For public schools, that for K to 12. That formula is inconsistent, out of date, and does not capture the true reality of providing education in today's economy. So I think we need to see an updated formula that is equitable and captures that reality of rising healthcare costs, rising special education costs. And I think it needs to go hand in hand with an additional investment of dollars in our public education system.
So kind of a step back, you're looking at just where we stand, how we can revamp it to not only make it better, but think about the programs that kind of go hand in hand with it, if I'm hearing you correctly right now. Because a change to that may mean changes elsewhere as well. Am I hearing that correctly or understanding that correctly?
I think the programmatic decisions are really going to come more at the local level than the state level. The funding decisions for what money the Commonwealth of Massachusetts allocates in the state budget every year to each community is determined through the Chapter 70 funding formula. The decisions
and that's
about
the formula specifically, the outdated formula that you spoke of. Okay.
Where that money is spent once it comes to Woburn and to Reading, that is a local decision.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yep.
You're looking to reform it at a state level.
Yes.
That makes a lot. Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. And what are there any other policies or priorities that you see bringing to the table? Maybe the second piece of legislation, excuse me.
Yeah. On a broad level,
Yes.
I think we should have a stronger safety net for people who find themselves in a vulnerable position. Knocking on doors, I've met with a woman who was able to age in place, but that was a unique experience. She was in her 90s, felt that she was an anomaly, having the financial support and family support to do so. I think low-income families and senior citizens need a better and stronger support system when they don't have it from their family or through their own personal financial resources. I do think that the state needs and our society needs to step up to the plate and take care of people who find themselves in a vulnerable position.
Initial thoughts. I know I don't want to dive too far into the weeds. We could spend a lot of time on this topic alone, but what would the first steps be into resolving an issue like that? Where would you go with it?
Yeah, so I think that there are many areas, but two key areas I think where we would need to have an investment, and that's housing options and healthcare. We need to Massachusetts has come a long way in advancing our healthcare system and making healthcare accessible to all residents, but we're not there yet. People still experience gaps in coverage, periods of uninsurance, medical debt that can be staggering in nature. And so I think we should be working very hard to develop what is truly universal access to quality and affordable health care.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great point. So I know we've covered a lot today, and I've learned a lot about you. Yeah. I hope our viewers have as well. It definitely sounds like you have a couple of coffee club events,
yes.
Facebook.com/AnnForStateRep, did I get that correctly? As well as www.annforstaterep.com, was it?
That's right.
That's where people can subscribe to your emails to keep up to speed with what you're doing out there and where they can meet you.
Yes, this Saturday I'll be at Demici's in Reading. I was last Saturday at the Dunkin' Donuts at 409 Main Street in Woburn.
Okay.
I think I'll be at Starbucks next weekend in Woburn.
Okay.
But
we'll
I'll
keep
be,
our ears to the
be
ground. You'll be around.
Locations. Yes.
And we'll, if they want to follow along, our viewers want to follow along, those are great places
Absolutely.
to do so as well. Last question. I know we've touched upon it a little bit, but I want to give you the opportunity to speak to the viewers directly. Why, at the end of the day, should somebody vote for Ann Landry?
Thank you for asking. I've worked on both the House and Senate sides of our state legislature, and I'm uniquely qualified to be our next state representative. As an attorney by profession and as a working mom, I have the perspective that will enable me to hit the ground running on day one in drafting and negotiating legislation. I also bring a high level of care, compassion, and commitment to the work of public service, and it would be a great honor and privilege to work on your behalf to advance your concerns and the needs of the people of Reading and of Woburn. Thank you so much.
And thank you for your time today. I think it will be refreshing to hear from somebody that has that perspective with a small child. Like you said, that's unique to bring to the table.
It is.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts, your policies, your passions with us today. Hopefully this leaves the people of Woburn and Reading a little bit more clear on their decision this fall.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tyler. It was a pleasure to be here today with you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching today's show with Ann Landry. Remember, we all have one life to live. Let's all do our part. I'm your host, Tyler Gates. Join us again next time for another episode of the Woburn Spotlight.